came out here in the, outdoors to just kind of speak on some stuff right now. I wanted to speak about guilt and anxiety and what I've come to learn about these things on my journey. If you actually look at the vibrational scale, of emotions and moods and all that stuff, guilt is down there, right? So, I'm pretty much awake, and I've been awake, but a lot of things have held me down. And I realized over the last, I would say, pretty much year and a half, that guilt has followed me around everywhere I've been. I've become so accustomed to guilt, which leads to anxiety. And I realized that I had a lot of, general anxiety. And I guess as I awoken, I was able to get rid of certain mind states, like, because, they diagnosed me with depression, bipolar, ADD, you name the mental illness, and they thought I had at one point, and I took them all on. But as I was awakening over the last couple years, and when I got off my meds, I was able to heal this stuff. Because all illness and disease is actually just dis-ease of the mind. Every disease that occurs in the human body starts from a thought, and then it just builds and snowballs and all that stuff. So basically all disease is dis-ease of the mind. So as I was able to, through my homelessness, through not having meds, not having doctors, I was able to basically deal with most of these mental conditions by sleep hypnosis, meditation, mindfulness, and all that stuff. I did have basically general anxiety, and a lot of it stemmed from guilt from when I was a child. But so I was able to work through these things, but the anxiety itself was so ingrained in my being. It was so ingrained in my being that I was not able to even realize that it was still there. I would kind of just push it aside or cover it up. And, I'm substance free at this point, basically from everything. Weed would bring that out of me, but I used to also medicate with weed. Like, it was like a weird thing. Because initially when you take a couple puffs, you relax your mind, it's a relief from everyday life. And then, it starts to creep up on you. And, these thoughts not being good enough, or these thoughts of things that you did 3 million years ago, another lifetime, I don't know. But basically that this was ingrained in me for, since an early age. And then I started, doing shadow work, meditation, and, I've worked through other things in life. And I started to realize that the guilt goes far back. Like the guilt, I remember when I was a kid, basically we were over at like a family friend's house, like, on my dad's side of the family, kind of like cousins, or third cousins or whatever. And I remember, for some reason, the kid had one of these McDonald's toys. Like, and I really wanted that McDonald's toy. And I remember going, as we were leaving the house, and my mom came to pick us up, we were going back into the house saying I forgot something, and actually going to take that toy. And I remember, man, I had to be at least 5 or 6, maybe 7. I was pretty young. It's probably about 93. So yeah. So basically it was like some sort of Viewmaster, like you put on your eye, and it showed you scenes from the movie. I think it was Fern Gully, Rescuers Down Under. That's what it was. So I remember stealing that toy, taking it home with me. And that guilt ate at me so much as a child. And I remember taking on that guilt. I didn't want to tell anyone, or so I kept it to myself. And then when I remembered that, I thought back too, you know, I mean, this has always been in the back of my mind. I've always remembered this, but I've never faced it the way I faced it. But when I was a child, we had a family friend. Our parents would get together at my house, and we would basically be left alone while they went in the room and did adult things, like at the time smoking weed. They left us go smoke weed in the spare room. So we were left alone with a VHS tape. I remember it was Muppet Babies or something like that. But me and her ended up going into the bathroom of my house and taking off our clothes and just exploring. I don't remember the whole thing, but I remember that happening. We basically took our clothes off and we were just like, you know, look at each other's bodies and, you know, touching. I don't know. I had to be about 5, 6, 7, around that same age. You know, very, you know, just a kid. And I remember back to that. And I remember even then, I remember feeling the guilt from that. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know who to go to. Because the adults to me were a sense of authority, you know, I'd be scolded or whatever. And then stuff would happen, you know, at that time it was right around, I remember when Magic Johnson came out and said he had HIV. It was all over the news and all this stuff, you know, and basically, you know, on the news they say it was from, you know, sexual intercourse and all that stuff. And at that time, I remember feeling even more guilty. Like I thought I had HIV as a child. Isn't that weird? Like, you know, but I realized that these two events in my life, I remember these two events in my life like they were yesterday. It's almost like my soul was there in the moment. Or like it was a very important moment in my life now that I look back. Even though I kind of covered it up. But I think about that guilt. I remember I had no way to get out. And as a child, I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm going to be stuck with this for the rest of my life. And I told my parents, I told my mom about that stuff. And, you know, I even told her about the toy that I stole. But, like, it's weird. In that moment, I knew I was going to carry that guilt. As a child. I was a child. So, basically this last year of my life, it's been bringing up a lot of stuff. You know, guilt. And I realized that, you know, guilt and the anxiety from guilt. Like, I've never been able to relax or, you know, be at peace in a way. I mean, that goes back, but I see it throughout my life. And there are obviously things in my life, you know, relationships, you know, friendships have added to this. Especially, you know, my one main relationship. We were together for a while, and she had this thing where she just made me feel guilty about everything. And, you know, I took that on too. I realize now. Like, I realize this is kind of a part of my freeing myself process. And one thing about guilt is when you feel in guilt, you tend to do things that keep you in guilt. You can't be set free to do things that, I don't know how to explain it. I think basically when you feel more guilty about something, the more apt you are to get trapped in it, or, you know, do the similar things to stay in it subconsciously, or at some other level that's can't even be explained. Because obviously if something has made you feel guilty, right, like you would want to stay away from it. But the fact is that pretty much when you feel these lower things, these lower vibrations, you sometimes just stay in these habits that cause the same thing. I mean, I used to feel I felt guilt about everything in general. Like, you know, not doing the right thing, or am I even taking the right step as I'm walking, you know, right path as I'm walking, feel guilty. And I realized that this is accumulated to a head where basically, like, to set me free. But, like, it was not easy. Getting rid of the initial guilt was not easy. It's not getting rid of it, I guess, but it's coming to terms with it and realizing that you've never done anything wrong. At the end of the day, I mean, I basically realized, through spirituality, through this journey, that no one's ever lost. It doesn't matter what you have done in this life. And usually the things that you have done that maybe the world will frown upon, or, everyone has their own opinions, but the world has a set of values and all this stuff, right? But basically, you know, when it comes to the divine and actual God in the universe, you were never lost, and you could never be left behind. This journey has taught me a lot about people and humanity. I've met some seedy people. I've met murderers. I've met molesters. I've, met pedophiles. I've met criminals. I've met some people. And through this whole process, I realized that basically the truth is no one's lost. No one is condemned. No one is left behind, basically. No one is, the divine in the universe loves you no matter what. And I guess I was so easy through this path, I was able to understand, that for myself through others, well, actually in the reverse, through others, I was able to find this for myself. I mean, I've done some weird things in my life, I would be proud of and stuff, but like, you could see that no one is lost. Like, and you realize too that like everyone is born pure, right? Everyone who has come into this world has been born pure. So no matter what they are now, in their adulthood, or as adults or whatever, no matter who they are now, they were not born into like, the murderer, the pedophile, the criminal. Life happened to these people. Something happened to these people where they were not able to free themselves or forgive themselves, or see the divinity and freedom in themselves. Because we have many systems that keep people in these, these states, these thoughts about, this condemnation of themselves. Like, they're not fixable and all that stuff, and that makes them not fixable. I guess through my whole journey to this point, I've come to realize that many people have trapped themselves in situations, positions, like homelessness, prison, because they could never find the peace within themselves. They could never find the salvation. And they've held themselves, because what society says about God and, sins and, just regular society without that stuff, like basically they did one bad thing, or one big bad thing happened to them, and then they conformed to that. They became a victim of that. They became a victim of their, shortcomings or mistakes. There are no mistakes. There are no mistakes. I've met people who were basically homeless because they did one bad thing in their life. That some people would even, I remember this one guy, I don't remember the whole story, but I remember it wasn't a bad thing. Like, it wouldn't be considered bad, but in his mind, it was bad. It was with his family. And he was homeless for that reason. He never wanted to go back. He never wanted to, But then I started to realize that, as this has come along, I realized that basically everyone is free. Everyone is forgiven. But at the end of the day, you have to forgive yourself. And that is one of the hardest things that, you can do with this human show. It doesn't matter what it is. One of the hardest things you can do is forgive yourself. for misunderstandings, mistakes, missteps, not doing the right thing in a situation. But I think that's a very strong, I think that's a very, strong suit of the divine, of, spiritualism, universalism, that you are born perfect. You are a child of the universe. And you are not held or condemned by any circumstances, anything in your life. But at the end of the day, we are the ones that hold ourselves there. And I guess, what it comes down to is basically you have to set yourself free. You aren't those things that that you may have done or people may have done to you, right? You aren't those. You are like an infinite being. And like you were born free. You were born here to be free. So over the last year, I've come to understand this and learn this in my own life. To minor things to things that, have been big stones connected to me. I've learned to set myself free. Because at the end of the day, like, it's like, no matter what I've done or, what I do, I know I'm good as God, right? Like, I'm taken care of. I'm a child of the universe. And so are you, right? But like, I know if, I were to be, if, I don't know how to explain it. I know no matter what would happen to me in this life, that I'm good. And but it's hard to, find that in yourself and free yourself from the idea that any sort of thing in your life is, I don't know. It's hard to express this properly. But over the last year, I've learned how to set myself free by basically I've learned to set myself free through understanding and humanity and understanding things that plague us as humans. And it's weird because it's like everything being lifted off. And I guess you can call that enlightenment. But like, to bring it back around, guilt and shame are one of the lowest vibrations that someone can have. And, a lot of us operate in that stuff. But I'm here to tell you that, like, you can break free too. Like, no matter what you've done in life, no matter, you're gonna murder someone, pedophile, whatever, I can see the divinity in you. And there's nothing wrong with you. There's many, crappy types of people in this world. Politicians, everyone's shady. There's a bunch of shady, beings. War criminals, whatever, world leaders. You name it. And I've learned that, like, basically, there's nothing wrong with them either. Right? Like, at the end of the day, they're I don't know. It's a very hard thing to process. And I guess I'm processing now. Right? I'm processing this now. through through speaking it out to you, I just want you to know that, like, you yourself are free. You are forgiven. Like, the universe has already forgiven you. God has already forgiven you. You yourself are the one that has to set yourself free. And that may not be easy, but it is possible. I am living proof of that. I am living proof that it's not about asking God for forgiveness. It's about forgiving yourself. You were born pure. You were born a child of the universe. You will always be loved by the universe and God. But you yourself have to realize that. There's many ways to do this. Meditation, journaling, therapy, living life and trying to find the answer, asking for the answers. You were already born perfect until you came into a set of scenarios that mess with your trust, your purity, your divinity, your innocence, right? That is not your fault. But at the end of the day, you are the only one that can take yourself off that hook, because you are already born perfect and pure, and you are already loved and will always be loved by God, by Source. You are never lost. I just want you to remember that. There's nothing wrong with you. No matter what you have done, you are loved. You are important. And you're supposed to be here. Just remember that. I love you. But you gotta love yourself. The universe loves you. But you gotta love yourself. The universe forgave you a long time ago, but you need to forgive yourself. That's all. I'm out. Love and light.